Mike Silver, my compadre from NFL Network, NFL Media Group, reminiscing about his Rodman days when he was covering him for Sports Illustrated, and then wrote a book with him, Walk on the Wild Side. Why do that book after he was already as bad as he wants to be, Mike? Why do that?
Well, it's a sad story, Rich. So after that SI cover story came out, which was the iconic cover with Rodman and the zip-up metallic tank top and the bird on his shoulder and all that, a publisher approached me, and I approached Dennis, and we were going to do it. And I had just gotten to SI. I really didn't know what that would mean in terms of time commitment, and I was their new football guy. Literally, Rick Tellender left a couple months after I got there, and they wanted me to be the lead football guy, and I didn't know what that meant either, but I knew that it was going to take a lot of work, and this book was going to have to get done timing-wise during that first season first full season I was covering in '95. So, I talked to my bosses. We tried to see if it was workable. They felt like it wasn't going to be workable on their end, and I ended up helping them find Tim Kuhn to do that book, partly because I knew Tim would crush it, and he hit it out of the park. It was a phenomenal book, and it worked out amazingly and sold a ton. And I was obviously a little bummed I didn't get to do it, but I knew the product was phenomenal. And then I was pretty amazed that they then came back to me and said, "Hey, we got a nice deal for a sequel. We want you to do it." And I'm thinking, Tim did a pretty good job on that first one. I totally get it, but it was amazing. The discussion to whether we were going to do the second book together. Literally, it went like this: Dwight Manley, his then agent, said, "Listen." By now he's on the Bulls. They're playing the Sonics that's a team in Seattle for you young people.
Right.
Seattle Supersonics in Game 1 of the 1996 NBA Finals. And so Dwight says, "Listen, just fly to Chicago, go to the game, and we'll, he said, we're all going to go out afterwards. We'll drink all night. We'll do our thing. And then, the next day at breakfast, we can nail this down." So I just flew to Chicago, and I didn't know where I was sitting, who I was sitting with. And, I grew up with Steve Kerr, so I was already feeling, pretty excited about the 96 Bulls. I knew Jud Bushler through Steve, and, now, of course, Dennis is on the team, and, Jordan's back in the finals. It's a pretty cool scene. And so I go to pick up my ticket, and it's courtside. Okay, cool. Wonder who I'm sitting with. A guy comes and sits next to me, and he's like, "Hey, I'm Jeff." I'm like, "Oh, hey, Jeff. Totally cool, chill dude." I'm like, "Oh, it's Jeff Ament from Pearl Jam." Of course. Nice, sweet. Big Sonics fan, so that was fun. So I proceeded to watch that epic game, Jordan going up against Gary Payton and et al., with the bassist from one of my favorite bands of all time. And then we all went out that night. There was this short guy who probably hadn't showered in a while, a little skittish at the time, hanging out with us. "Oh, there's Eddie Vedder. Cool." And, really, that kind of stuff wasn't uncommon going out with Rodman, although, Eddie Vedder was a pretty big deal, of course. But, there was a big fun scene with people from all walks of life. And I think, in those days, that's why Rodman, really felt so invigorated and so emboldened to just let it fly, because he wasn't seeing it as just basketball. And I have plenty of conversations with him where I said, "Hey, dude, rebounding. Like, I know you think you're a movie star. I know you think it's bigger than all this, but you got to stay great at the one thing that you're the best at. Don't forget." And, but as things kind of went on, that scene changed, and more people around him, I felt, were just egging him on to be Dennis Rodman, the Freak Show, and there were fewer people who came into that scene as legitimate entities who did their own thing, and I think it got harder and harder for him that way. And I'm proud of him for persevering and hanging tough and still being still being in the mix, and he's definitely not a perfect guy, but he's tried very hard to not let it all collapse.
Hey, you watched all the way to the end. Thanks for that. Watch more right here.